proud to have him here with us, sir. Thank you. Mr. Saurabh Sanyal, Secretary General, our President, Mr. Pradeep Multani, President, PhD CCI, and Mr. B.K. Sabharwal, the Chair, Capital Market and Commodity Markets Committee, PhD CCI. Thank you so much, sir. The theme for today's lecture is Azadi Ka Amrit Maha Utsav and the glorious legacy of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. Subhas Chandra Bose ji, as was affectionately called Netaji by all, was one of the most prominent leaders of the Indian freedom struggle, as we all know. He had founded the Azad Hind Fauj, and Netaji's devotion and zeal to make the country free from the colonial rule were comparable to none. He lived and died working towards the goal of independent India. The legacy he has left behind motivates each Indian, and it is our privilege to commemorate him today. May I request everyone to please stand for the national anthem. Thank you.
भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंग विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्ज्वल जलधि तरंग तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
To begin today's proceedings, we would like to start by playing an audio-visual presentation remembering Netaji. Can I request the team to please play the presentation? Thank you.
कौम की तू कौम पे लुटाए जा कदम कदम बढ़ाए जा खुशी के गीत गाए जा ये जिंदगी है कौम की तू कौम पे लुटाए जा शेरे हिंद आगे बढ़ मरने से फिर भी तू न डर उड़ा के दुश्मनों का सर तुझे वतन बढ़ाएगा तू शेरे हिंद आगे बढ़ मरने से फिर भी तू न डर उड़ा के दुश्मनों का सर तुझे वतन बढ़ाएगा कदम कदम बढ़ाएगा खुशी के गीत गाएगा ये जिंदगी है कौम की तू कौम पे लुटाएगा संभाल के लाल किले पे गाड़ के लहराए जा चलो दिल्ली पुकार के हमें निशान संभाल के लाल किले पे गाड़ के लहराए जा बढ़ाए जा सीखे गीत गाए जा ये जिंदगी है कौम की कौम पे लुटाए जा बढ़ाए जा सीखे गीत गाए जा ये जिंदगी है कौम की कौम पे लुटाए जा गाए जा, ये जिंदगी है कौम की, तू कौम पे लुटाए जा, कदम कदम बढ़ाए जा, खुशी के गीत गाए जा, ये जिंदगी है कौम की, तू कौम पे लुटाए जा। शेरे हिंद आगे बढ़, मरने से फिर भी तू न डर, उड़ा के दुश्मनों का सर, तुझे वतन बढ़ाए जा। शेरे हिंद आगे बढ़, मरने से फिर भी तू न डर, उड़ा के दुश्मनों का सर, तुझे वतन बढ़ाए जा, कदम कदम बढ़ाए जा, खुशी के गीत गाए जा, ये जिंदगी है कौम की, तू कौम पे लुटाए जा। चलो दही पुकार के, हमें निशान संभाल के, लाल किले पे गाड़ के, लहराए जा लहराए जा। चलो दही पुकार के, हमें निशान संभाल के, लाल किले पे गाड़ के, लहराए जा लहराए जा। कदम बढ़ाए जा, खुशी के गीत गाए जा, ये जिंदगी है कौम की, तू कौम पे लुटाए जा, कदम कदम बढ़ाए जा, खुशी के गीत गाए जा, ये जिंदगी है कौम की, तू कौम पे लुटाए जा।
Thank you. This song, Kadam Kadam Badhai Ja, has been one we've heard all throughout our childhoods, and I think it reverberates in each and everybody's mind. And whenever somebody needs feeling, this is the song that brings all our patriotism to the fore. Now I would like to request our Secretary General, Mr. Saurabh Sanyal, Secretary General, PhD CCI, to please share the welcome address and the introductory remarks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bhavna ji. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Distinguished Chief Guest and Keynote Speaker, Shri G. Kishan Reddy ji, Honorable Union Minister of Tourism, Culture and Donor, Government of India, who's going to join us at 5:30 p.m. for the program. Special guest of honor, Srimati Anita Bose, daughter of Netaji and senior economist, who will be addressing us from Germany. Special guest of honor, Shri Chandra Bose, grandnephew of Netaji and convener, the open platform for Netaji, who's sitting right in front of you. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for him. Our guest of honor, Shri Sanjay Kumar, Secretary, Youth Affairs, Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, who had promised to join, but unfortunately he had to move to Jakarta and he'll not be able to join us this evening. Distinguished guest, Shri Sanjeev Sanyal, Member, Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. He will be joining shortly. He is almost reaching in the next 5 minutes. Shri Pradeep Multani ji, our President, PhD Chamber, CCI. Gentlemen, a round of applause for him. Shri B.K. Sabharwal, our Chair of the Capital Market and Commodity Market Committee, PhD CCI, sitting on the dais. Managing Committee members, former presidents, distinguished members who have joined virtually, my colleagues and friends from the media. Once again, a good evening to all of you. We are very much thankful to you for being here this evening and making the first Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose Memorial Lecture organized by the Chamber remarkably successful. With greatest sense of respect and gratitude, here we join all of you to pay our homage to the great freedom fighter, the Honorable Shri Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. At PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we are inspired to start this very important commemorative lecture series, celebrating the 125th birth anniversary of a great freedom fighter, Honorable Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, in the 75th year of our independence, celebrating the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. It is indeed an honor for us to welcome you all today in the first Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose Memorial Lecture. and to celebrate the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. To celebrate the 125th birth anniversary of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, a campaign called Netaji at 125 has been launched as part of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. The Honorable Freedom Fighters' 125th birth anniversary is being celebrated throughout the country with year-long activities. It began on the 23rd of January 2021 and would continue to be celebrated till January 23rd, 2022. It is heartening to see that the PhD Chamber's commemorative Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose Memorial Lecture Series is starting today, followed by the next one, which we propose at the Biplab Gallery at Victoria Memorial at Kolkata. It will be led by none other than Shri B.K. Sabharwal, our chairman of the Capital Market and Commodity Market Committee, PhD CCI. Since its establishment in 1905, PhD CCI has been working as a catalyst of nation-making initiatives and are carrying forward the momentums with various initiatives through policy advocacy, programs, research, and publications. PhD Chamber, as an apex industry chamber, is always at the forefront for creating government and industry interface and strengthening India's position in the world. Moving forward, it is vital to look back and reckon the essence of the glorious journey we have traveled as a great nation. India's rising prominence in the world makes it an essential to celebrate our extraordinary tradition, culture, national icons, and legacy. Today's program is in the fond memory of the Honorable Netaji, who is a testimonial of this. On this path, we shall continue to march and send the message across the young generations to know about the exemplary life and works of the Honorable Netaji, a great freedom fighter. I am pleased to share that we have organized an exhibition in the Moti Hall, and you are all requested to see the visual representation of Honorable Netaji's remarkable life and works right after the lecture. Thanking you all once again for being here and contributing to the deliberations. I will now request the session moderator, Shri B.K. Sabharwal ji, to kindly take the proceedings forward. Jai Hind.
Our Secretary General has given an excellent knowledge about the subject. Now, welcoming Mr. Dalip Bose, the grandnephew. I am told that Anita Bose ji, the daughter of late Netaji, has joined us virtually from Germany. President Mr. Pradeep Multani, Secretary General Mr. Saurabh Sanyal, and the other past president, the executive committee members, and people from all across the countries who have joined virtually to us. We also welcome Madam Usha Menon Bose, the wife of the grandson of, she is among us. On behalf of PhD CCI, we just found that two of the ex-members of Indian Army who are now attached to the Netaji's parties, they are also with us. There's one here, and the other gentleman, please, sir, let the people see that you are here. You had one more person here, no? Yeah. So they are from that legacy only that they are with us. Ladies and gentlemen, as conveyed by the Secretary General, actually, I am thankful to both our Honorable President and Secretary General that this particular idea of celebrating the Netaji's 125th year of birth, which is done by Government of India, the PhD has taken, the only chamber which has taken the lead of celebrating it. And as Secretary General has announced that we will be doing the second event at Calcutta, and we will be doing a concluding function on actual 125th birthday of Netaji on 23rd January in the coming year. Maybe if God permits, we will ensure that either the Prime Minister or the President or the Vice President comes in that event, and we will be doing it in no less than Vigyan Bhavan. I was watching the video which was shown. I am of a very strong opinion. I was so keenly watching the video that it was such an excellent video that if each picture of that video is talked upon, is deliberated upon, if something is told about that picture of the video, I am of a very strong opinion that nothing else is required to be talked about Netaji. Because thanks to the Secretariat of PhD for compiling such an excellent video. Special thanks to you and your team, sir. Matlab, after watching that, I was of very strong opinion that if we just start explaining each picture of the video, nothing else is required to be known about Netaji. Now, as I have given the duty, honestly speaking, I was initially told that I will be the moderator of this program, but probably the PhD management thought that being 70-year-old, let a pretty face should be put as the initial moderator, which is done now. I am really thankful to that also. Now, I remember that I had the privilege that in my early career, I worked in Odisha. I was in Paradip Phosphate in Odisha, and I had the privilege of visiting Netaji's ex-house, Netaji's first school, and Netaji's college, Raman Shah, where he studied. So that privilege also I am having. I also have a privilege that way back in 1966, on 23rd January, there was a function in my school when I was studying in just 8th standard, and the then Education Minister of Government of India, Mr. M.C. Chagala, came, and I spoke about Netaji on that day. Probably, I am honest to myself that after 57 years, I may not be remembering about Netaji that many things, as many I spoke on that day on 23rd of January 66. Now, to give you a little background, as all of you are aware of, Netaji was born on 23rd January 1987 in the afternoon in Cuttack. Cuttack that time used to be a part of the Bengal state. It was the Odisha division of the Bengal province. He was the 9th child of the 14 brothers and sisters of Prabhavati Das Bose and Janki Nath Bose. Janki Das Bose ji was an advocate. Right from the childhood, when he entered his school, his headmaster has recognized that he is a brilliant child because of the inspirations he had from the then starlets of the country. His father wanted him to become an ICS. That time, what our IAS is today, it used to be called ICS at that time. After studying at Raman Shah College in Cuttack, he then moved to Calcutta to complete his graduation. For his further studies, he moved to Cambridge and promised his father that he will appear for the civil service examination. And very glad, as all of you are aware of, that he qualified the ICS and was fourth position in the ICS at that time. From the total country, he was on the fourth position. But he did not work for in that government service at that time. Even today, it is very lucrative to become an IAS, but at that time, to become an ICS was taken in very high esteem. But he wrote to his elder brother that as I want to serve the nation, I am quitting the job, and he resigned from his civil services job on 23rd of April 1921 and returned to India. Now, one is that I start telling about that what happened after 1921 and right up to 1945. But which many of you are not aware of, I will start with that Netaji, if he is remembered only for one thing, and that is the first Prime Minister of India for a short-lived government of India during the British rule. And which is, I am only not saying it. We are being taught that the first Prime Minister of India after the formal independence to India on 15th of August 1947 was Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. But no, in 1945, when many parts of the country were made independent from the British rule, it was Netaji who became the first Prime Minister of India. And his government was also, it is not that I am saying, even if you search on Google, it will say that. The USA portal Google it is mentioned there also that the first Prime Minister of India announced was Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose has left deep impact on the psychic of Indians. His slogan, Jai Hind, is even today spoken, not only in the Army, Air Force or Navy, but for any social or religious function, or at least we friends, when we greet to each other, that time we even today greet to each other by using the word Jai Hind. How much time I have? I will just try to. That's how much time I have. So, because if I start speaking about his total this thing, I may go for even hours also. I will not like to mention much about, though personally I am a critic of the then political netas who became the leaders after the India formally got the independence. But the fact remains that the Indian independence had not come from the peaceful agitations. It was the actual independence to India. There are, if you start searching Google, you will find that actual independence to India came because of the activities of the INA, the Azad Hind Fauj, or the nationalist. I remember that many people have mentioned Lokmanya Tilak ji was very much affectionate to Netaji. Veer Savarkar in his books after 1945 have written many a times that the actual independence in India, if it has come, it was because of not the so-called liberals, but because of those aggressive nationalists who, under the leadership of Netaji, has fought for the Indian independence. Though, I will like to also mention, though there was a remarkable difference between him and Mahatma Gandhi ji. In 1938, he was even removed from the presidentship of the Indian National Congress. But the last speech available on radio, which he delivered from Singapore, the last speech available of Netaji Subhas Bose, what was his height, I am trying to tell you. He has, even in that speech, mentioned Mahatma Gandhi ji as Rashtrapita. Now, to come about, I will later come about the 1943 to 1945, what has happened and how. But to tell you about his childhood also, there are certain his habits which must be mentioned to the public who is listening about the Netaji for the first time. And that was that he was never believing in caste discrimination. A story is available that in childhood itself, one of his friend who was from a Dalit community, when he was suffering for cholera, he stayed with him for more than a month to ensure that he becomes all right. Not only that, he used to appeal that why not the youngsters and ladies also joined the freedom movement. I remember that way back in 1924, he was elected as the chief executive officer of the Calcutta Corporation. And the two reforms which he brought as a chief executive was that the pension used to be paid only to the Britishers, which he started for the Indians also as a chief executive officer of the Calcutta Corporation. As all of you are aware of, that even the Calcutta airport is named after him. It is, if any of you had happened to go, so the Netaji Subhas name it is. As I said that when on 21st October 1943, independent Indian government was formally established, Netaji was the first prime minister. This government was recognized by Japan, Korea, Italy, China, Irish Republic. At that time, what we call today Andaman and Nicobar, he has named Andaman as Shahid Deep and Nicobar as Swaraj Deep. In December 43, in that independent so-called India, the portions of India, there were many places in Kohima, Nagaland, what today called Manipur, what is today had been Brahma, that was a part of Burma, that was a part of Rangoon, that was a part of India only, and that were liberated by, that was made independent by 1945 itself. He landed in that Shahid Deep on 30th December 1943. On 26th January 1944, let me tell you that one good thing was done by this government. Many of you are not knowing that why 26th January, 15th August is the Independence Day. But why is the 26th January as the Republic Day? It is taught to us that the Indian Constitution was formed, but the basic was that on 26th January 1944, as a Prime Minister of India, he had given his first speech at Rangoon, where lakhs of people had turned up. He, for the first time, called people to finance the independent movement. And you will be very happy to note that on his appeal, the money collected, money in form of the ornaments of ladies or the properties of the individual, was much more than the expectations of Netaji and his team. It was much more than that. On that very day, out of the 56,000 war prisoners present there, 50,000 of them has selflessly joined the Azad Hind Sena on that 26th of January 44. He was a great leader for the mass mobilization. He used to call his one slogan is even today popular. तुम मुझे खून दो, मैं तुम्हें आजादी दूंगा. And a fact remains that Azadi came only when the maximum number of people denoted. It was not that you have to denote the blood. It was not to be done the blood donation. The terminology was, तुम मुझे खून दो, मैं तुम्हें आजादी दूंगा, was that be a part of the movement to sacrifice your life, and you will certainly see India as an independent India. He called both men and women to join the freedom struggle. He was a strong believer. I have the indication that I have to stop, but I have a privilege also that as I am the moderating, I may be talking few points before the each individual I am calling. So I will try to finish it, but one or two points, I will not be justified if I am not talking on those two particular points. Yes, I will just talk on 2 points for which I am a part of that. One was that he believes in the financial and economic strength of India. Sanjeev Sanyalji will be joining and he will be highlighting those particular points more. And he was believing that it should not be only the independence. We have to ensure that even the financial independence of the country is also there simultaneously. He was a pioneer for the economic planning, but also was a strong believer in the application of science and technology. I will like to mention here, today we have internets, today we have Googles, today we have whatnot. But the first thought of science and technology also, he was a believer that not only by the agitations, but by the economic growth and by using the science and technology only, we will be able to get this particular independence to the India. In the last, I will just say that the intelligent, intellectual, the type of leader he was, probably after independence, the amount of appreciation or the prestige to be given to him was not done by the then political leaders. But yes, for the youngsters had still believed that he was the person because of whom we could get the independence. Jai Hind. You have to continue. From Germany, Mrs. Anita Bose Puff is with us. She is the daughter of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. Netaji Subhas Bose married to a German lady in 1941. She was born in 1942. And Netaji, when she was not even 1 year old, Netaji had to leave Germany for the independence of India. Today, she is 80 years young, and we will now listen about the Netaji from Madam Anita Bose Puff, who has joined us virtually from Germany. Over to you, Anitaji.
Netaji was born 125 years ago. He passed away almost 77 years ago. Unfortunately, without having seen his beloved motherland, India, independent. Therefore, we might say that he was a man of a different era, not of today. However, there was some magic about him that lets him appear forever young, forever timeless. Even today, how else can we explain that after all these years, many of his countrymen and countrywomen, the men and women of another era of today, not only remember him as a historic figure, but beyond that, he is able to imbibe an unbelievable feeling of respect, of admiration, of wonder, and even love in many Indians today. People who have never seen him personally, who could never experience the magnetism of his personality. It's amazing. Of course, I may be biased in getting this impression. Like everyone, I live in a bubble, and in this bubble of information in which I live, people who are enchanted by Netaji seek to contact me. They hope to sort of get a second-hand contact to Netaji through this. Obviously, those who are critical of him and who critical of his actions, or those who do not remember him at all, would not come and tell me about him, would not come and tell me about their sentiments and their criticism. But even though not all Indians remember Netaji today, and not all remember him with admiration, a surprisingly large number still does. They remember him in a very personal and emotional way even. I continue to be amazed by this phenomenon, but at the same time, I feel very grateful for it, because I feel that he has deserved these sentiments. He who has sacrificed so much for his country and his countrymen and countrywomen, even his life is thereby rewarded. 75 years ago, my father did not live to see India become independent. You might see a great tragedy, but that's on the one hand. On the other hand, it may be a boon, because he did not have to witness the tragedy of India's partition. He would have opposed this partition with all his determination. He had warned against the British rulers' intention of divide and rule, of their continuing emphasis on communal division in India. But in all fairness, we must admit that tragically and shamefully as it may be, there were enough Indians, of all creeds for that matter, to share that unfortunate demand for partition and along communal lines. It resulted not only in millions of refugees, but also in hundreds of thousands of dead Indians in 1947. Indians murdered by Indians. And communal violence and conflict, even wars, have been the consequence of this development. Like Mahatma Gandhi, Netaji opposed the partition of India along communal lines. He would have been equally horrified to experience the atrocities his countrymen and countrywomen inflicted upon each other. One might say his untimely death India. In India, where Indians of all walks of life would cooperate in mutual respect towards the well-being of all. This involved specifically three aspects. First, the relationship between women and men. Second, the relationship between members of different castes and different creeds. And third, the relationship of Indians of all regions. Netaji expected that such a social fabric would provide the necessary basis for the successful cultural, political, and economic development of India after independence. Netaji's efforts in the struggle for India's independence showed that these ideals were no mere words to him, but that he was determined to put them into action. In fact, he practiced these ideals during his campaign in the Far East, starting from Singapore in 1943 up to his flag hoisting on Indian soil in 1944 and the subsequent military defeat and retreat up to the end of the armed struggle and his death in 1945. And of course, he had also practiced it in Europe before that. Netaji was a staunch believer in the equality of men and women, and both with regards to privileges as well as with regard to duties. In fact, he even established the first women's corps in the armed forces. Even today, there's hardly a country where gender equality has been achieved, especially not in the armed forces. India, even today, has a far way to go with regard to gender equality, even though some headway was made since the 1940s, no doubt. There are women in all highly qualified professions today. India was, in fact, one of the first countries with a female head of government, Indira Gandhi. At least the educated families believe in educating their daughters, not only their sons. Netaji had propagated this in his own family in the 1920s already. He would, however, feel deeply ashamed that India still has the reputation as the country with the highest degree of violence against women in the world, even today. That's hardly a matter to be proud of. Netaji practiced the equality and mutual respect of members of all castes and of all creeds in his provisional government of Free India, which was proclaimed on October 21, 1943, and in the Indian National Army. While separate Hindu tea and Muslim tea had been served in the British Indian Army, the soldiers of the Indian National Army fought together, ate together, and celebrated their respective religious festivals together. Netaji made it a point to have members of all creeds cooperate in their efforts. With regard to the regions, we can say that members of all regions in India cooperated in the struggle for independence. South Indians and North Indians, East Indians, and people from the west of India. The Indian expatriates, we would call them non-resident Indians or NRIs today, provided major human and economic resources for the struggle of India's independence. Netaji tried to choose one Indian lingua franca, cutting across the region, so to say, for Free India, Hindustani, as a mix between Hindi and Urdu, written in the Latin script. Looking at Netaji himself, we can say Netaji was a Bose, he was a devout Hindu, he was a Bengali, but with regard to his aspirations and his identity, he made all Indians his family. As a devout Hindu, he could respect all other religions and recognize their common values. And beyond being a son of Bengal, he saw himself as the son of India, or in view of the partition, I should rather say the Indian subcontinent. Keep in mind what these characteristics meant in 1945 and what they might mean today. It's not the same thing really, because circumstances have changed. Following the end of World War II, we could observe a trend towards universalism or multilateralism throughout the world. The wish to overcome strife and wars permanently. The UN, as a peacekeeping undertaking, entailed high hopes in 1945, and a monetary order, according to the Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944, held optimistic expectations for the world's monetary and economic order. Of course, the monetary order has changed since then, and the UN is not terribly effective whenever the major power is concerned and their interests are at stake. But soon, two blocs occurred under the leadership of the United States on the one hand and the Soviet Union on the other. And therefore, the universalist ideas could not be realized to a large extent. There was practically no time when the world at large was at peace. The fact that independent, I should say, West India chose to be one of the leading nations of the so-called non-aligned countries, not a member of one of the two blocs I mentioned before, was, I think, very wise. Choosing her path as free, democratic, secular country made India akin to the Western Bloc, so to say. Choosing a more state-controlled or administratively controlled economy, at least up to the early 1990s, made her at the same time akin to the socialist or communist economies. It is likely that Netaji would have chosen and supported a similar path for India had he been involved in post-independence politics. After all, he and the later Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru were two modern leftist leaders in the 30s and 40s, more or less of the same generation. Netaji had always been an internationalist. Some opponents of Netaji criticized him as being a fascist himself for supposedly sympathizing with fascists. But his interest in other countries was guided by the wish that they would support India's struggle for freedom. It was he who actively sought the contact with and support of other countries in India's struggle. However, these international contacts were motivated by political expedience and not by ideological kinship. India's freedom struggle was the sole motivation for cooperating with countries like Japan, Germany, and Italy. In those days, these were all fascist countries with questionable values and track records. In no way did their values and practices conform to Netaji's own values and political convictions as a socialist, or in today's diction, maybe a social democratic politician. But which countries, after all, were willing to support a struggle against the British Empire in the early 1940s? The Soviet Union was unwilling to support Netaji in 1941. And of course, after the German attack on the Soviet Union in June 1941, she became an ally of Britain, automatically, more or less. Netaji was at least supported in his struggle by Germany, Italy, and Japan, since they were the opponents of Britain at the time. Germany continued to discriminate against Indians at the same time, but also provided a half-hearted support to the Indian struggle for independence. Japan had played a similar aggressive role vis-à-vis other nations in Asia, as Germany had done in Europe, but seemed to support Netaji in his struggle even though their values did not coincide in many matters. We may well conclude that Netaji would have kept an open mind to internationalism and multilateralism for free India. After the experience of colonialism, it is, however, safe to assume that he would not have been willing to subject India to the sole dominance of one country, be it the United States of America or the Soviet Union. Today, India is one of the 5 major economic powers and thereby political players, along with the United States of America, China, the European Union, and Russia. Its large population provides a large domestic market, which makes it to a degree independent in the world. Universalism was partly superseded by regionalism and multiple centers of economic power. We can assume that Netaji would have advocated a strong proactive role for India in this international concert. In 75 years, India has gone through many challenges. She met some of them successfully, others less than what was expected in 1947 and before. The primary commitment to the struggle for freedom of poverty, illiteracy, and ill health, and for human rights of all men and women continue, and they will always continue in some way or other. And some new challenges, like the climate crisis and pollution, have emerged, which threaten the entire world. The freedom fighters of those days, to some extent, lived in a different world, but the values for which Netaji stood and have not become obsolete, and the integrity of the freedom fighters of those days should not be forgotten, but regained. Jai Hind.
Thanks a lot, madam. You have joined us from Germany. In a 19-minute your speech, you had almost touched all the aspects of Netaji. And now, without wasting time, actually, we welcome Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, the economic advisor in the Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council. He was senior advisor in Ministry of Finance, where he visited PhD many a times as the senior economic advisor in the Ministry of Finance. Sir, as you are not there and Minister was also not there, I had taken a lot more time than what was allocated to me. But now I am straight away calling upon Mr. Chandra Bose, the grand nephew of Mr. Netaji, and I request him to touch those points which the general public is not aware about the Netaji. Over to you, Mr. Chandra Bose. I am sorry that I am not introducing you in detail, that you can start yourself as we are short of time. Over to you, Mr. Chandra Bose. Actually, I am of the opinion that we should give him a standing ovation as he has come, along with his wife here, right from Calcutta.
Jai Hind. Please. I am really honored that I have been given this opportunity to say a few words about the liberator of India, Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. And this opportunity has been given by none other than PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Have you ever thought what PhD stands for? Progress, harmony, and development. This is what we all want in 21st century India, and this is what Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose wanted when he fought the battle for India's freedom. Distinguished speakers on the dais, Sri Saurav Sanyalji, Secretary General of PhD CCI, Mr. B.K. Sabharwalji, who has already spoken at length about Subhas Chandra Bose and India's freedom struggle. Then we heard my aunt, Srimati Anita Bose Pfaff, recollecting the difficult days of the Second World War, when Germany was at war. She was brought up, she's Netaji's daughter, but she had a very difficult upbringing. Her mother, Emilie Schenkel, had to work as a secretary to bring up her daughter Anita. And today, Anita, we are very proud that she is a professor of econometrics at the Augsburg University in Germany. She is into helping the refugees who have come into Germany to settle down. She is a socio-political activist working in Germany, has her own position, apart, of course, for being Netaji's daughter. Pradeep Multani ji is chairing this very important program, I would say, because this marks the beginning of the 125th year celebration, birthday celebration of Subhas Chandra Bose. Honorable Minister Sri G.K. Kishan Reddy would be joining us shortly. Then we have one of the most renowned economists in our country, who I have heard speaking on many forums. And he has joined us late, but nevertheless, he's joined us, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, Member Economic Advisory Council in the Prime Minister's Office. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we meet here to celebrate Netaji's 125th birth anniversary year. I would, in brief, try to project what Subhas Chandra Bose stood for. There is a PowerPoint presentation, if that could be started. The presentation, of course, is a 45-minute presentation. I would not go through the entire slides, but I would touch upon some of them. See, the battle for India's freedom, according to me, started way back in 1857 with the Sepoy uprising of Mangal Pandey. Then we had revolutionaries like Khudiram Bose, Binoy Badol Dinesh, Shahid Bhagat Singh, who did not hesitate to sacrifice their lives by going to the gallows. Side by side, we had Mahatma Gandhi's non-violent movement, which also had its own impact on British imperialism. But today, we have come across British intelligence reports where we find certain secret documents, exchange of secret documents and letters from the British government in India to the British High Command in London. These documents very specifically state that the final onslaught on British imperialism was none other than the Battle of the Azad Hind Forge and the subsequent INA trials, which were held at the Red Fort in early 1946, completely destroyed the loyalty and allegiance of the British forces to the British High Command. This is the ultimate nail in the coffin on the British imperialist powers. Now you could say that I don't believe you. You don't have to believe me at all. Do you believe Field Marshal Auchinleck? Field Marshal Auchinleck was in charge of the British armed forces during the Second World War. Field Marshal Auchinleck has written a secret letter to his superior. That time it was Viceroy Wavell. And he writes to Viceroy Wavell that the loyalty and allegiance of the British forces cannot be trusted any further. Subhas Chandra Bose, when he was leading the Indian National Army, the 60,000 soldiers, when he was marching towards Imphal, we all know that famous tune. Even today, we get that excitement in our blood. Kadam kadam badhaye ja, khushi ke geet gaye ja, ye zindagi hai kaum ki, ye kaum pe lutaye ja. With this marching tune, 60,000 soldiers marched towards Moirang. And that historic occasion, 14th of April 1944, Colonel Shaukat Ali Malik of the Indian National Army defeated the British forces on Indian soil for the first time at Moirang and hoisted the Indian national flag. This history is not that well known. I have requested the Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi ji, that it is time that we write the true heroic battle of the Indian National Army, document it and make it a compulsory text in schools and colleges. I understand, I'm very happy to state that the NDA government has taken the initiative, and NCERT and Book Trust of India, who are entrusted in publishing textbooks for schools and colleges, have taken up this assignment. I'm sure that prior to 2024, the history of INA would be presented to the youth of our nation. Now, quickly, I would go through the slides. If I could control it, it would be easier if there is a control, or is he doing it from there? Well, the relevance of Subhas Chandra Bose in 21st century India. Next slide. Subhas is known as a deathless hero. I am not getting into the controversy that whether Subhas Chandra Bose perished in an air crash on the 18th of August 1945, because it is controversial. We are not yet sure about the mystery. But whether he died in 1945 is not the issue. How he lived for the nation, I think, is the issue for the youth of our country. He was in any case a deathless hero. So his death is of no consequence to the 135 crore youth population of India. Next. Next. Is there a control that I... No, if you can give me a... You don't have that. Okay. His early life, Sabharwal ji has already touched upon. See, he had very good teachers. I think it is very important for an individual, for his personality to grow, build up, to have good tutors. Beni Madhav Das was his tutor when he started his journey in education, and he was greatly influenced by the teachings. Thank you. This one. Of Beni Madhav Das. Actually, it is projected there. You are not able, you can see it.
We are here.
Yeah?
Here also.
Oh, yeah.
Also and here also.
Okay, okay, okay.
All people are able to watch it.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Subhas was a very spiritual person. Many of you might have known he was in search of a spiritual guru, and he found one who gave him the strength of character, one who made him struggle for India's freedom, was Swami Vivekananda. Subhas Bose was a staunch disciple of Swamiji, and if you later on notice when he built and enhanced the Indian National Army, the art of character building, the ideology of character building, he enforced in his Indian National Army. 60,000 soldiers who could march for one objective in mind, freedom for their motherland. These are basically his scholastic achievements. I wouldn't take too much time in this. You are all aware, people who have read about Subhas Bose's early life, his ICS examination that he qualified. But here I would like to clarify certain British records. We find that Subhas Bose actually stood first and not fourth. But Britishers realized that they cannot give the first position to a Bharatiya, to an Indian. So he was given the fourth position. But actually, if you would have divulged his actual marks, he probably would have stood first. More research has to be done on this, so I don't want to elaborate further. But here was a man who was brilliant. But why did he actually resign from ICS? You see, his father, my great-grandfather, Janakinath Bose, was very happy that Subhas could pass the ICS examination. You see, all parents and all fathers are very happy if their children do well. And ICS was the most revered service in those days. But Subhas decided to resign. He wrote a letter to his father, Janakinath, and stated that I cannot serve two masters. I have accepted one master, Bharat, my motherland. So a second master, the British Empire, I am not in a position to serve. Thereby, I have submitted by resignation. Janakinath Bose wasn't at all pleased. But there was one other person in our family who supported Subhas's move. That was my grandfather, Sarat Chandra Bose. Sarat Chandra Bose supported Subhas's move of resignation from the ICS and returning to India to fight for India's freedom. And since 1921, it was Sarat Chandra Bose who stood like a rock of Gibraltar along with his younger brother Subhas. And we all know the Bose brothers and the Indian independence movement. They wanted a united India. They wanted Purna Swaraj. Here, Sabharwalji has mentioned about Subhas Bose being the first Prime Minister of India. Yes, of course, Subhas Chandra Bose, I wish to clarify, was certainly the head of state and the first Prime Minister of United India. Mr. Nehru was also a first. I think we should also give due respect to Mr. Nehru. But Mr. Nehru was the first Prime Minister of divided dominion of India and not united India. This is history. I cannot change it. India became a republic only on the 26th of January 1950. Prior to that, India was holding a dominion status, and we failed to attain Purna Swaraj. All leaders, starting from Mahatma Gandhi, another stalwart, Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das, Subhas Chandra Bose, Sarat Chandra Bose, all fought for Purna Swaraj. The Congress's entire movement was based on Purna Swaraj. But it is most unfortunate that we accepted dominion status on the 15th of August, 1945, and 2 dominions were born. That was the headlines in the paper. Anyway, India today is free. Subhas Bose wanted political, economic, and social freedom. We have attained political freedom, but I think we are still a far cry away from Subhas's dream of economic and social freedom. We are fighting today. Today, the youth of our nation, we have to fight for social equality. We have to fight the economic disparity that exists across the nation. And that would be really achieving Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose's dream. This is a business forum. This is a forum for social reconstruction. So we need to understand that Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose formed the first planning committee of India in 1938 when he was the Congress president. And he was so inclusive in his approach. There were political differences with Mr. Nehru, but he made Mr. Nehru the chairman of that planning committee so that we can all work together. But then you might say that Subhas Chandra Bose, he had to resign from the Congress presidency. Well, we are very lucky that Subhas Bose resigned, because if Subhas Bose would not have resigned, India would not have attained freedom on the 15th of August, 1947. Political differences was one of the reasons, but the main reason why Subhas Bose left the Congress and embarked on this perilous journey across Asia, Afghanistan, Russia, for this India's one only mission, India's freedom, we would not have seen freedom in 47. He could have settled matters. आजकल जो होता है ना राजनीति में, अरे आप समझौता कर लीजिए, समझौता करके आप सॉल्व कर लीजिए. He was a person who never compromised. He realized that if he continues in India, Congress will never be able to attain freedom for our nation. He realized to drive out the British, you need an armed struggle. And that is exactly why he went to Germany. He probably never liked Adolf Hitler. During the interaction when he had with Adolf Hitler in Berlin, do you know what he spoke to Hitler on his own terms. Those days, even Hitler's own people could not challenge him. Hitler would have just assassinated the person. But Adolf Hitler was told by Subhas Chandra Bose directly on his face that, Herr Hitler, you have no idea about India's rich heritage and culture. A lot of you may have read Mein Kampf. In Mein Kampf, Hitler has written derogatory remarks about Bharatiyas, about Indians. So Subhas Bose objected to that. He said, you please delete those paragraphs that you have written about India. To read and write about India, first you study the heritage and culture of India. Subhas Bose had the charisma to say that. Hitler did not help him much, but he did help him with the submarine. The submarine journey, 90-day submarine journey from Kiel to Madagascar would not have been possible without the assistance of Adolf Hitler. Now I will come back to the psychological impact that the INA had on the British armed forces. You see, Netaji realized very clearly, he was not an army man. but he studied international warfare, guerrilla warfare in depth. So when INA was marching towards Imphal, 60,000 soldiers cannot defeat an army of 25 lakh. The British forces were 25 lakh strong. But out of the 25 lakhs, only 40,000 were actual Britishers. The rest were all Bharatiyas, Indians. Netaji realized when the Bharatiya component of the British forces would see that you are fighting with your own brothers and sisters, there would be an emotional breakdown and they would revolt. That's exactly what happened. When the INA marched towards Moirang and the subsequent trials were held at the Red Fort, 3 officers of the Indian National Army were tried. One was a Muslim, Shahnawaz Khan. Second was a Hindu, Prem Kumar Saigal. And the third was a Sikh, Gurbakh Singh Dhillon. So when the trial was going on in the Red Fort, early 1946, उस टाइम में एक कहावत था, लाल किले से आए आवाज, धिलो, साइगल और शाहनवाज. You know, when this message was spread across the country, do you know, from Karachi to Mumbai, from Mumbai to Chennai, Chennai to Bengal, people came out on the roads with Subhas Chandra Bose's photograph and said, Jai Hind, across the country. That is the time the naval mutiny started in Mumbai port. 78 ships of the British Navy revolted against the empire. Do you know this story? This history has not been told. 78 ships, the Union Jack was brought down, and with our national anthem, the Indian flag was hoisted on 78 ships. But the sad story, which a lot of you have not known, 1944, 14th April, Shaukat Ali Malik of the Bahadur Brigade of the Indian National Army hoisted the flag. For 3 months, the Azad Hind government was in action in Nagaland and Manipur. On Indian soil, Azad Hind government actually governed at that time. If the Congress leadership, you see, I cannot change history. I am not here to please anyone. I am not here to do politics. I am here to tell you the true history of the Indian National Army and its Supreme Commander, Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. So I am here to tell you, that time message was sent. If the Congress leadership sitting in Delhi would have supported the Azad Hind government, Subhas Chandra Bose and the Indian National Army, the army would have marched on to Delhi in 1944 and hoisted the tricolor on Red Fort, and we would have attained Purna Swaraj, undivided, united India's freedom. We lost that opportunity. The army had to retreat, that is a fact. But today, when we talk about Subhas Bose, there are certain lessons to learn. See, he was the only leader who practiced what he preached. My aunt Anita Bose Fafet stated he was a devout Hindu. Late at night, he used to go to Dakshineshwar Kali temple and pray. He used to get immense strength, inner strength, by praying in front of Kali, Ma Kali. He used to be a follower and disciple of Swami Vivekananda and Ramakrishna Paramahansa. But when it came to freedom, when it came to politics, religion did not matter. Caste, creed did not matter. The only nationalist and the only Indian till date who could unite Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists as one, as Bharatiyas. And that is the relevance of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose in 21st century India. I would call upon the youth of our nation that if you want to really pay homage and respect to Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, you must imbibe and practice his inclusive ideology. We are one. We respect all religions, but we are all Bharatiyas. Unless we follow that, we cannot keep India united. I have had many discussions with many senior leaders. I wouldn't like to mention names here. And I have stated that you cannot pay respect to Subhas Chandra Bose by inaugurating a museum. You cannot restrict Subhas Bose's gigantic personality within the four walls of a museum. You really cannot honor Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose by unveiling and erecting his statue. The only way you can honor this man is follow his inclusive ideology, who could unite all religions and all community and maintain communal harmony and peace. The nation cannot progress unless there is harmony. So I'm very happy that your name, PhD Chamber, there is harmony mentioned there. We must build India based on harmony. What was the motto of the INA? Itefaq, Itemat, Qurbani. I think that the time has come that youth of our nation, you see, we are on the threshold of retirement, but the youth has to come forward. And I think the principles of Swami Vivekananda, of character building, the principle and ideology of Subhas Chandra Bose, of uniting all communities, should take us forward through the 21st century. We should believe in modern science and technology. See, Swamiji was certainly a spiritual leader, but a lot of you have studied Swamiji's ideology and thinking. He believed in modern science and technology. I think the time has come that we think about our forefathers who could give us the strength to take India forward. Okay. Yeah, sure. So friends, it is really a happy occasion that I could interact with all of you, but we actually need a full day seminar to really talk about Subhas Chandra Bose and the man, what he stood for. I would come back again, if you give me the opportunity, to have a full seminar and discussion on Netaji's political activities, his economic thoughts. Sanjeev ji might also be able to throw some light there, and also his social reconstruction that he wanted. With these words, thank you. Jai Hind. Namaskar. Okay.
Thanks a lot, sir. We had to cut short you. We promise you that in our Calcutta event, as well as the final event on 23rd January next year, we will give you much longer time and we will be keeping it a bigger event also. Now, we have with us Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal. The PhD has many time interacted with him on the economic matters. Netaji used to believe on financial and economic strength of India. And as mentioned by his grandson, that a planning commission was formed by him way back in 1938. So I will now request Sanjeev Sanyal ji, who is advising to the whole country on the economic policies, and today he is the part of the Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council, to talk about Netaji from the economic point of view. Over to Mr. Sanjeev Sanya.
Thank you very much. It's indeed an honor to be here to speak about Netaji and about his legacy. Unfortunately, I'm in the somewhat unenviable position of having to follow on from Mr. Chandra Bose and Anita Bose as well. And you've heard quite a lot about Netaji, his ideas, his legacy. So I was trying to rack my brain while I was sitting there. What is it that I can say that can be a little bit different? So what I thought I will do is first situate Netaji in a slightly wider context of what he was attempting to do through the INA, because the INA did not happen in a vacuum. And this is a history that is important, because sadly after independence, much of the official history that has been handed down to us and continues to be the history we end up reading in our textbooks gives you the somewhat mistaken impression that India's freedom struggle was somehow uniquely peaceful. The nonviolent movement did have a role, but the fact is that India's freedom struggle had another strain, which was just as important, some would argue more important, which was that of armed resistance against colonial occupation. And that story is not a new one. That armed resistance to colonial occupation goes back to the very beginning. It goes back to the resistance, for example, of the Marathas and the Sikhs against British incursions. After the British had well established themselves, it came in the form of repeated revolts. One of the very first ones, of course, was the one of 1857, but there were several others, including the ones by Birsa Munda, the tribal revolt. There was one by the Manipuri. Many often people forget that, in various far-flung parts of the country, there were continuous revolts going on. And of course, in the first half of the 20th century, the resistance of the revolutionaries. And this context is important because this is the story from which Netaji's story is connected. So you have to go back to the beginning of the 20th century, which is the time when Swami Vivekananda, but also another remarkable spiritual leader and thinker, Aurobindo Ghosh, were essentially trying to light the flames of national reawakening in India. And this is the context in which the revolutionary movement was born. Now, is it the case that the revolutionaries were attempting to sort of overthrow the British rule by the occasional act of assassination? Not at all. The revolutionaries knew, and they were quite realistic, that the occasional act of assassination or subversion and so on, while may cause some irritation to the British rulers, was not a serious threat to British empire. So what were they really trying to do? And this is important because then you will understand what the INA was really about. What they were really doing, and you can read many of their writings, you will see, what they really wanted to do is to cause a revolt in the British Indian army by undermining the loyalty of the Indian soldier to the British crown. This was what they were all attempting to do. And the first really big effort happened, of course, in the pre-revolutionary period, when during the revolt of 1857-58. Of course, that was crushed, but it allowed a certain inspiration that remained alive. And this came into fruition in the first decade of the 20th century, when the likes of Sri Aurobindo, then known as Aurobindo Ghosh, and Vinayak Savarkar began to stoke up this idea. Both of these luminaries and freedom fighters were arrested circa 1909, 1910. But the idea of sort of stoking up a big revolt in the Indian armed forces remained. And it was taken up by two remarkable revolutionaries in 1913-1914 as the First World War was taking off. And one of them was Rash Bihari Bose, and the other was my granduncle, Sachindranath Sanyal, whose grandson, my cousin, Saurabh Sanyal, happens to be the Secretary General of PhD Chamber of Commerce. So there is a very link to my being here. And the two of them arranged for this huge revolt to happen in February of 1915. And they lined it all up, that there would be these series of revolts all across India. And it was about to happen, but just 2 or 3 days before this revolt was supposed to take shape, one of the members of the planning group defected, informed the British what was going to happen, and overnight the British changed all the guards at the various ammunition dumps from Indians to Europeans. So this revolt didn't really happen except in one place, interestingly, in Singapore, where the Indian regiment there revolted and held Singapore for a full week. And it was ultimately put down, interestingly, with the help of the Japanese soldiers from a nearby naval convoy. This is all ironical given what happened a generation later. So this particular revolt didn't succeed. Sachin Sanyal was sent off to Kalapani. Rash Bihari Bose escaped to Japan, and he would play an important role in the next generation. Then, of course, the First World War ended, and all these soldiers began to come home. Now remember, as I told you, most of these soldiers had been almost about to revolt in February 1915. They had not revolted, they had been sent off to die in the trenches of Europe. And now in 1919, they were all coming back home. And there was genuine fears in the British establishment that these soldiers, now they were not just soldiers, they were veterans. They had lost their fear of killing the white man, having fought the Germans in the trenches. And they were coming back and they were going to revolt. That is the context in which the Jallianwala Bagh massacre happened. Very often the story of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre is truncated in a very peculiar way to give you the impression that it was all about the cancellation of a Congress party meeting in Jallianwala Bagh, and then the British got all very angry and shot 1,300 people. That's not the case. It has to be seen in the context of the fact that there were large numbers of these demobilized soldiers coming back. There had been several incidents in Punjab at that time, and many of them led to massacres. In Gujranwala, there was aircraft bombing of a crowd and hundreds of people died even in that. So this was, Jallianwala Bagh was just one of those incidents. Anyway, after Jallianwala Bagh massacre, many of the revolutionaries who had been captured during the previous attempt to cause a revolt were released. And one of them was Sachindranath Sanyal. He came out and he recruited a new generation of revolutionaries under the banner of something called the Hindustan Republican Army. The name the initials HRA is important because it mimics that of the IRA, the Irish Republican Army. And he then recruited the likes of Bismil, Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, Ashfaqullah Khan, and so on. So that generation of revolutionaries were recruited by him. There was an incident called the Kakodi case in which they were all arrested. Many of them were then hanged. Sachin Sanyal was sent back to jail again. But this continued to be many more revolts. There was a major uprising in Chittagong called the Chittagong Armory Raid. There were all the incidents relating to Rajguru and Bhagat Singh and Sukhdev, who were hanged as well. There were a series of revolts that happened, including one in Hijli jail, which is now IIT Kharagpur, and so on and so forth. And it is in this context that Netaji was operating. It is important here to know this because people think that suddenly out of thin air, Netaji decided to go and create the INA. He didn't. He had long associations with many of these groups, the Anushilan Samiti, the Jugantar Group, the Hindustan Republican Army, later on the Hindustan Socialist Republican Association, and so on. And as a part of that, in fact, there were very close associations between these revolutionaries and the Congress Party as well. Contrary to popular belief, the Congress Party had many. Namaskar. Contrary to popular belief, the Congress Party had always close associations with the revolutionaries. This was true of the Lal Bal Pal generation. It was also true of the 1920s, where many revolutionaries were brought into the Congress Party by Chittaranjan Das. And many of the youth who had sort of affiliations to the revolutionaries ended up in the Congress Party, which included, incidentally, my great-grandfather from my mother's side as well, whose name was Nalinaksha Sanyal, who had been part of the Jugantar group before he joined this. And they all became very close associates of Netaji. And they began to organize something that is semi-independent of the Congress Party called the Bengal Volunteers. Again, the Bengal Volunteers, which had groups outside of Bengal as well, so sometimes generally just called the Volunteers. The Bengal Volunteers was a very important group, which became sort of like I wouldn't call it a paramilitary force, but it's certainly a group of organized youth that was operating in the late 20s and early 30s. And of course, many of the Binoy, Badal and Dinesh, who went and carried out an attack on Writers' Building in Kolkata, they were members of this Bengal Volunteers. So I'm telling you this story because, again, the history of the revolutionaries and their link to Netaji is sort of brought up as if Netaji, as an afterthought, having been pushed out of the Congress, somehow embraced the revolutionaries. That is not the case. He had had a very long association with the revolutionaries, including with all these characters, including both my mother's and father's family. Both Sachindranath Sanyal and Nalinaksha Sanyal knew him personally very, very well. And it's in the 30s that you begin to see a new sort of movement begin to bubble up, particularly towards the late 30s. And this happens because, again, the smell of war begins to permeate. And by 1939, it's quite clear, even before the war actually starts, that something is going to happen. And we know from letters that were written by Rajbihari Bose to Sachindranath Sanyal, which, by the way, Saurabh Sanyal has now given as has contributed as a standing loan to the Victoria Memorial Biplavi Bharat Museum. So you can go and see some of them there. So Saurabh has given those letters, and in those letters, there is clear discussion happening between Sachin Sanyal and Rajbihari Bose that this war is going to come. The Japanese are going to be involved. We need to be out there. And of course, they are also interestingly talking about how Netaji should be a part of this scheme of things. So it's not, again, as I said, well before the war, all of these conversations were already happening. In fact, Netaji went and met Sachindranath Sanyal in 1939 in October in a Durga Pujo in Lucknow. And I recently went to the place where that pujo is held. It still exists. Interestingly, there is a Bengali association there which still holds that pujo. I suppose two Bengali revolutionaries meeting at Durga Pujo sounds quite appropriate. Anyway, the war started, and of course, Netaji very famously escaped to Germany. But the old idea of causing a revolt in the Indian army, using Indian soldiers in the British Indian army to cause a revolt, remained alive. And of course, Rajbihari Bose then used that opportunity. He went to Singapore after it had been captured by the Japanese, spoke to the Indian soldiers who had surrendered and formed the first INA. In some ways, what he was trying to do is what he had attempted to do in the First World War. Unfortunately, by this time, Raj Bihari Bose himself had become quite old. And he realized that he was not able to kind of give them the kind of leadership required. And that is the context in which the Japanese and Raj Bihari Bose requested for Netaji to come. And one of the few good things that perhaps Hitler did in his life, he organized for the submarine to drop him off near Madagascar, and he was transferred all the way to Asia. And then ultimately, the INA finally took shape in 1943. I won't have to repeat many of the incidents that Chandra just told us about how they marched all the way to Moirang in Manipur. But of course, militarily speaking, the INA was defeated because the Japanese, their primary supporters, also were defeated. But it led to a sensation when these INA veterans were brought to Red Fort and were put on trial. For the first time, the Indian population, but very importantly, the Indian troops across the empire heard about this great revolt. Because remember, till that point, wartime censorship meant that most Indians did not know about the INA. And finally, they suddenly find out about this major event. And there was a lot of murmuring of discontent. Now, let me tell you, why was this a major world event, not just an India event? Because remember, at this point in time, the British Indian Army effectively controlled the entire area from Egypt all the way to Vietnam. They were in control of India, of course, but also of Burma, of Malaysia, of Singapore, of Indonesia, which had been a Dutch colony, but the Dutch had been defeated by the Germans and had been in disarray. And they had gone all the way through to Vietnam. Southern Vietnam, incidentally, was also held by the British Indian Army. And these murmurings of discontent in the British Indian Army was a serious issue, because if the British Indian Army, with very thinly spread European leadership, had revolted at that point, essentially the world would have essentially, not just the British, the Allies would have lost control of all the what they considered the liberated areas. So that is the context in which, by the way, in February of 1946, there was a major revolt in Mumbai, or Bombay at that time, called the Naval Mutiny or the Naval Revolt of 1946, in which 20,000 naval sailors, veterans of the Second World War, revolted to control of 78 ships in Bombay Harbor. There were similar revolts that happened in Karachi, in Kolkata, and many other places. So it was very, very clear in that context that something very big was about to happen, and allies were about to completely lose control of Asia. And therefore, it is not very surprising that it was during this revolt that the Cabinet Committee on India's Independence was formed. Again, people forget, naval mutiny itself, most people are unaware of. And it is so important, it's during that mutiny, while it was happening, that the Cabinet Committee on India's Independence was announced. So you can clearly see a clear thread going through the revolutionary movement, through the INA, to the naval revolt, leading to India's independence. Unfortunately, when India became independent, most of the revolutionaries were no longer alive. Raj Bihari Bose had died, Sachindranath Sanyal had died, Netaji had died or gone missing, Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, Bismil, all of these people had been killed or had died of other causes. And so the revolutionaries had no leadership at the point that India became free. And therefore, when the Congress party took control of India at independence, the alternative story of India's independence essentially was wiped out of our public memory. All that we remembered is that, yes, there were some brave people, they did something off and on, maybe they were brave, but you get the impression that it had no consequential impact on the story of India's freedom struggle, which is not at all true. You read all the papers from that time, all the records from that time, even testimonies from people like Dr. Ambedkar, and you can clearly see the people of that time clearly recognized that this particular lineage of armed resistance leading to freedom, which has been completely wiped out. Now I'm going to end here But before I do so, let me say that the impact of the revolutionary movement remains with us today across the ideological spectrum. And many of you people may not even be aware of this. This is true for the entire ideological spectrum. The communist movement, the CPI, incidentally was also formed by a former revolutionary, M.N. Roy, in Tashkent in 1920. So the communist stream of our politics comes directly from the revolutionaries. So does the other end of the ideological spectrum. The RSS was formed by Dr. Hedgewar, who was a member of the Anushilan Samiti and therefore a revolutionary himself. And he set up the RSS in 1925. So the other end of the ideological spectrum also comes from the revolutionary movement. Interestingly, many branches of the Congress party also came from the revolutionary movement, with many stalwarts having been brought into the revolutionary movement by first C.R. Das, and then later on, even after independence, people, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Shah Nawaz Khan was also served in the Congress. So you can see the right, the left, and the center, all of them were strewn with revolutionaries at various points in time. So whatever we have inherited to this day of our political structure, deep within it is embedded this movement of armed resistance, which has not quite ever gone away. And there are many small things which we do not recognize are really the ideas of these revolutionaries, whether it's our national song, Vande Mataram, which was really adopted originally by the revolutionaries, our national anthem, Jana Gana Mana, which was also adopted by the revolutionary movement and the armed struggle under Netaji. Our national salutation, Jai Hind, is also from that. And I can go on. In fact, the revolutionaries were the first to even conceive of India as a republic under the constitution of the Hindustan Republican Association. So, point I'm making to you is that despite many attempts to sort of sweep this history under the carpet, this history is alive. It remains alive across in our political life to this day. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Sanjeev Sanyal ji. We had been listening in last many years to you on the economic front of the country, but this particular, it was really very pleasant. And yeah, and we assure you, sir, that though Secretary General has told that we will be doing a function in Calcutta, we will be doing one function on 23rd January. But sir, after listening to you, at least from the core of my heart, I am requesting you that we will be calling you among the financial people of the country to speak on this particular subject also. Thanks from the core of the heart on behalf of the PhD also. And now, as the Honorable Minister has joined us, let us go for the lamplighting, please.
Thank you so much, sir. And may I request all the dignitaries to please proceed for the lamp lighting ceremony so that we can have the spread of knowledge and get the auspicious blessings for this program. Thank you so much, and may I request everyone to give a warm round of applause to welcome our Minister, Honorable Minister G. Krishan Reddy, Honorable Union Minister of Tourism, Culture and Donor. Can we have a big round of applause to welcome him? Before I request him to speak, I would like to request our President Pradeep Multani sir to please give his presidential address. Thank you.
Actually, I could not stop my temptation. Before I call my honorable president, I will like to just tell him the dynamism he had. This particular subject was discussed in every chamber, but only our president has taken a lead of deciding that they will be doing the series of events. In my inaugural, I am not, he being a Punjabi, I am not actually getting tempted to speak one line before I call him. I mentioned about 23rd January 1966. I remember that as Sanyal Sahab has said, that whether he died or what time, there was a poem which was sung in 1966 also, 21 years after that. And that poem in Punjabi was, कि नेता जे प्रदेश जान दिया भुलिया कौन तरीका है जिसने मुड़ आवन दिया आज तक करदा देश उड़ीका है. That who has forgotten the date when Netaji left India, and even in 1966 we used to talk that we expect that he may still come back. And now I call my dynamic president to give his presidential address, Mr. Pradeep Multani.
Thank you very much, Subhas Sahab. A very good evening to everyone. Our chief guest and keynote speaker today, Shri G. Krishan Reddy, Honorable Union Minister of Tourism, Culture and Donor, Government of India. Special guest of honor, Shrimati Anita Bose Plaf, daughter of Netaji and senior economist. Special guest of honor, Shri Chandra Kumar Bose, grand nephew of Netaji and convener, the open platform for Netaji. Distinguished guest, Shri Sanjeev Sanyal, Member Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, Shri B.K. Sabharwal, Chair, Capital Market and Commodity Market Committee of PHDCCI. All esteemed participants, Namaskar and good evening. With greatest sense of respect and gratitude, I am paying my homage to a great freedom fighter, Shri Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. We at PHDCCI initiated this idea of commemorative lecture series celebrating the 125th birth anniversary of a great freedom fighter, Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, and 75th year of our independence, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, which was proposed by the Honorable Prime Minister. It is indeed a big privilege for me to be here as we are commencing with the first lecture of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose Memorial Lecture Series today at PhD House, New Delhi. I highly appreciate the thoughts shared by the fellow speakers who broadly reflected on Netaji's exemplary contributions for India's freedom struggle and the strength he provided with his leadership that immensely helped India to get independent in 1947. While I'm here with you all today, I'm looking back at the time when Netaji and other brave freedom fighters were giving a tough challenge to the most brutal rule of the British Empire that was always at fault in keeping the exploitation of India and Indians as their key aims. As the president of PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, it is indeed an honor for me to welcome you all in the first Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose Memorial Lecture to celebrate Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav on 75th anniversary of India's independence. We would like to know the precise truth, the precise facts, and look back and bring to the fore the wonderful contributions of Netaji and all our other freedom fighters. And I must say that it has been really an eye-opener to hear Shri Chandra Kumar Bose as well as Sanjeev Sanyalji, because the things they have said, even at my age of 66, I did not know that. So as a chamber, we definitely want, while being totally non-political, we definitely all need to know the truth and highly appreciate the wonderful sacrifices of all the freedom fighters and know the history in its real truth. We as the chamber, our motto is that we have to make India a developed country. We follow whatever our Honorable Prime Minister said, make India USD 5 trillion economy, become one of the strong superpowers of the world in every way forward. And we, as a chamber, we reach out to more than 150,000 companies. And also, we have offices in 17 states and 3 union territories. And we have been trying our level best that we will work shoulder to shoulder with the central government to take the Indian economy to the next level and take us from the fifth biggest economy to maybe in the first 3 economies, because we strongly believe we can do it, and we have a dynamic leadership, and we are confident that in the next 5-10 years, we will achieve whatever goals we have. I think we would all like to hear the Honorable Minister, because after hearing Mr. Bose as well as Mr. Saurabh Sanyal, one is still in a deep thought of really wishing to know the truth. And our Progress, Harmony, Development Chamber of Commerce and Industry, definitely we will do whatever is possible to bring things out in the true form. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mr. President. And now we are calling upon to give the keynote address our chief guest for the day, Honorable Union Minister for Tourism, Culture and Donor, Government of India. Before the program starts, sir, few of my friends were telling that Mr. G. Kishan Reddy is not only the Cultural Minister of India, he is going to be the next Chief Minister of Telangana also. So over to you, Mr. Reddy, for your views. We had listened Anita Bose from Germany. We have listened Saurabh Sanyal ji, and it was really, we have more number of people virtually joined with us from throughout the country. Though you came late, this hall was 75% full in the early time, but yes, whatever, virtually still people from all over India are here. Over to you, Mr. Reddy. I feel as Honorable Minister is here with us, we should give him a standing ovation first.
Thank you. Thank you. सबको धन्यवाद. नमस्कार. श्री B.K. Savarwal ji, Chair of the Market Capital Commodity PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Srimati Anita Bose ji, daughter of Netaji and senior economist. Madam already addressed the gathering via virtual. Sri Chandra Kumar Bose ji, grand nephew of Netaji and convener the open platform for Netaji. Sri Sanjeev Sanyalji, fortunate I came in between. Member of Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, Government of India. Sri Pradeep Multaniji, the President of PhD Chamber of Commerce. And friends, with the greatest sense of respect and gratitude, I pay homage to our great freedom fighter, Sri Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. Whenever I have heard Netaji's name, I have felt inspired and motivated. Not only we can see crores of people of India and particularly youth of this country, they have take inspiration from Netaji life story. Today I bow to the man who fought against the colonial powers and encouraged many Indians to fight for freedom of independence of our motherland. The daring steps that they took to fulfill his fierce commitment to the ideas of a free India. That is the Azad Hind makes him a national icon. His ideals and sacrifice will forever inspire every Indian, particularly our youth. This government is doing all steps to ensure that the legacy of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose is preserved for future generations, promoted by governments at all levels across India, propagating great dareness of the Netaji. Under the visionary leadership of our Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, our government, Indian government, is particularly keen to revive the great and enduring legacy of Netaji. Friends, recently on 23rd January 2022, the entire country celebrated 125th birth anniversary of great personality Sri Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. To honor and remember Netaji's selfless service to the nation, the government declared Netaji's birthday on 23rd January as the Parakram Divas. For every year, government of entire people, we are going to organize this function in coming days. Friends, every Bharatiya is indebted to Netaji. Every drop of blood flowing in the body of more than 130 crore Indians indebted to the Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. The government of India has decided declassify the files related to Netaji and make them accessible to the people of India and globe also. This was announced by the Honorable Prime Minister of India in October 2015 when he met a delegation of the great Netaji family. In 2019, Prime Minister inaugurated the Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose Museum in the great monument of Red Fort complex as a Kranti Mandir. The Kranti Mandir is a tribute to the revolutionary zeal and courage of our great freedom fighters and their sacrifices. Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji also inaugurated the hologram statue of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose at very historical and nearby the National War Memorial at India Gate this year and 23rd January 2022. Very soon, the hologram will be replaced with a very, very attractive and inspirational statue with a big granite single stone. This work already started in Delhi. We are going to replace the hologram very soon. Netaji and his fellow freedom fighters like Rasbihari Bose and Captain General Mohan Singh played very key role in forming the Azad Hind Force. However, it was a Netaji who announced the formation of country's first independent provisional government, the Azad Hind government, on 21st October 1943. Friends, Netaji is not only freedom fighter, he is a great inspirational and he did a number of social activities. Netaji role in great management in disaster time in West Bengal, flood relief is not discussed much. However, he played a significant role during the Bengal floods in 2023 to recognize and honor the invaluable contribution and selfless service rendered by individuals and organizations in India in the field of disaster management. Government of India has instituted an annual award known as a Subhas Chandra Bose Aapta Prabandhan Puraskar. This we are going to every year this Puraskar in the name of Subhas Chandra Bose ji, those who are working in the field of disaster management. Apart from this, Republic Day celebrations will now begin every year, not only 26 January, we want to start. Last year we already started. 23rd January to 26 January, including the every year birth anniversary of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose to Republic Day celebrations, 26th. I would like to take this opportunity today and inform all of you that to celebrate 125th birth anniversary of Netaji, a campaign called #Netaji 125 has been launched as a part of Azad Kamrut Mahotsav from Government of India. To carry forward Netaji legacy, the freedom fighters' birth anniversary will be celebrated with a year-long activities. To begin in January 23rd, 2021, and in continuing this activity 23rd, August 15th. Friends, I believe that the post-independence, the role of our many unsung heroes have been ignored and sometimes even arrested. To honor and commemorate to our heroes, Prime Minister Modi ji launched Azad Ka Amrit Mahotsav on 12th March 2021. The various programs and commemorations under Azad Ka Amrit Mahotsav will continue till August 15th, 2023. Friends, this initiative is also an ode to the freedom fighters who contributed to the freedom struggle. As the entire Amrit Kal in 2047, over the next 25 years, 70 years of India independence celebrations, we are going to celebrate. 75 years of Azad Ka Amrit Mahotsav gives an opportunity to lay a vision, Amrit Kal, that is 2047 for coming 25 years. Who is going to Prime Minister in 2047? Which party will rule in 2047? Which Prime Minister host national flag from Red Fort? That is not important. Our country should become a Vishwaguru in 2047. We should strengthen our country. We should solve all the problems socially, economically, in one of the strongest democratic country. We should also strongest in all the fields in 2047. That is Prime Minister call coming 25 years is a Amrit Kal for to take the country in all fields to the champions. A vision of new India that is guided by the spirit of Atmanirbhar Bharat has enabled to us reach the milestone of crossing 200 crore vaccination against the COVID-19 pandemic in only last 1.5 years. Today, I would like to thank the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, office bearers and the leadership and the team members of initiating this very important commemorative lecture series in the name of Subhas Chandra Bose. I have been informed that the lecture series will celebrate the 125th birth anniversary of our great freedom fighter Netaji and also 75th of year of India independence. In less than a month, India will be celebrating its 75th year of independence. For every Indian, coming 15th August, very, very important day. Our fortunate given God, we are the part of this great democratic republic of India, 15th August, 75th of independence celebrations. 15th August this year, Government of India taking initiative in every Indian, every house, every village, every street to host tricolor on 15th August for occasion of Azad Ka Amrit Mahotsav. On the day, we are planning 20 crore families host flag, tricolor flag in their houses. The vision of this Har Ghar Tiranga program is to instill patriotism in the hearts of Indian citizens. This will be done by inspiring every Indian to host the national flag on 15th August at their respected homes. Government aims to exact 20 crore households to be part of this Har Ghar Tiranga initiative. I will request the support and cooperation of the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry in making this initiative a grand success. Discussing this with the stakeholders in the various events that are conducted by the PhD Chamber of Commerce. And once again, I thank you all being here and contributing the great deliberations. I will request you, PhD Chamber of Commerce of India Industries and other such organizations to come forward, to come together and organize more such events which will raise awareness among our younger generation about these great sons of our country. I once again thanks to the PhD Chamber of Commerce and their office bearers. This Azad Ka Amrit Mahotsav time, you are doing very excellent activities, and I expect up to 2023, 15th August, you should also continue this type of activities, because great personalities like Subhas Chandra Bose ji, we should remember every time. We should also recognize, we should also respect their contributions, their sacrifices for this motherland. And also, I once again, Parliament is on. That's why I came little. I am requesting to excuse me. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Honorable Minister. On behalf of the President of PhD Chamber, we assure you that not only in the houses, we will ensure that in the offices, in the factories, or in any other places where our members and their families are there, this flag will be hosted on 15th of August. We, as mentioned by you, we also promise you that not only for the birthday celebration of Netaji, but even for Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, as you are a part of the cultural minister also, we will be doing some more activities. This is the only chamber which has come forward under this leadership, and we assure you that we will be disturbing you again for the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, bigger festival of the PhD chamber also. And now I request my Honorable President, Mr. Pradeep Multani ji, a very dynamic president, to present a memento to the Honorable Minister on behalf of the PhD chamber. हाँ जी, सर करूँगा, आप देखिए उसे मैं कुछ और करने वाला हूँ. Sir, I am taking a liberty. If you don't mind, I will now request you, the Honorable Minister, to present a memento to Mr. Chandra Bose, the grandnephew of Netaji and convener of the open platform for Netaji. Honorable Minister giving it to Sir, I once again request you to present a memento to one of your colleague only in the Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council, one of the best economists of the country, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal. Sir, Anita Bose ji has joined virtually to us from Germany. It will be not good if we don't present a memento to her also. And now I request the daughter-in-law of Anita Bose ji, who is present among us, Mrs. Usha Menon Bose, to receive it on behalf of Madam Anita Bose, who was there with us from Germany. Madam Usha Menon Bose to receive it on behalf of the माननीय मंत्री जी नीचे आ गए आपके लिए। अच्छा आ गया जी, आ गया। On behalf of PhD Chamber and on behalf of the President of PhD, we are thankful to Honorable Minister that though a lot of political activities are going on, he straight away came as promised in the this program, which is attended virtually from throughout the country by many people. We are thankful to the Honorable Minister. We are thankful to Mr. Chandra Bose ji, who traveled right from Calcutta along with his wife also. I have promised, I have requested both Mr. and Mrs. Bose that in our next program, he will bring their children also, the great grandchildren of Netaji also will be present with us. We are thankful to Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal. It was really, really pleasant. We had been listening only economic things from him, but today it was altogether different. And as I had said, we will be inviting him for in the economic people will be inviting to deliver this lecture in the country. That's what. And last, we are thankful to Madam Anita Bose ji, who joined us from Germany. And last but not the least, we are thankful to all of you who are physically here and without whom and all those who are virtually also joined with us. I am told many of our past president, many of our executive committee members were virtually with us. We are thankful, if we will not do it, to our sponsors of the event, the Globe Capital, the Kalpataru, SIPL, and the Power Guild, which is our executive committee member sitting right among us also, for sponsoring the event. Thanks a lot. And now I request you to join us for a high tea outside.
Can I request all the dignitaries to please for a group picture? Thank you.
We will request, please be seated. Please stand at your place. We'll do the Rashtragan for a minute.
Can we have the national anthem again, please?
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंग विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्ज्वल जलधि तरंग तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे
Netaji was paid by the Honorable Minister only, that even he did not wear his shoes until he completed his speech also. That was a real commendation.
A big round of applause for the Honorable Minister, for Mr. Bose and Mr. Sanyal. Please, can I request everyone to just, give a big round of applause to everybody for sparing time and coming here today. We look forward to seeing them in our next series as well. And thank you so much. Requesting everyone to join us for high tea outside, please. Pleasure having you all here. Thank you.